One of the most well-known individuals was Greg Mullavey. He was the manager during the championship years of 1941 and 1942. Attendance was at an all-time high of over 122,000 in 1941 and 143,000 in 1942, an all-time Jamestown high and a minor league record high for several years. Greg Mullavey was born in Detroit in 1905 and played shortstop for the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox. He became well known for his 8 memorable years at Buffalo, which in later years led to his election in the Buffalo Baseball Hall of Fame. After retiring in 1940, he came to Jamestown as a player-manager, where he hit .355 in 1941 and .320 in 1942. Those were the days of the great Jamestown-Olean rivalry, where Greg Mullavey and Jake Pitler, the Olean pilot, were part of the color and hot civic pride that permeated the league. Ironically, in 1958, Jake Pitler and Greg Mullavey's paths would cross as teammates as they were coaches for the Los Angeles Dodgers. However, it was the early 1940s when Pitler and Mullavey were managers against each other in what was then called the finest Class D league in baseball.
Want you to know I love him so.
In May of 1991, Greg returned home to celebrate the first Lucy Fest, where we had a chance to interview him.
You probably remember the name. My father is probably somebody you know who used to manage the Jamestown Falcons. Remember the Falcons?
Remember this.
Oh, dear God.
Remember all those?
Oh, my God, there I am. Oh, Jesus, I was a bat boy, kind of. I had a large bat boy. Be able to play with these guys who were like gods to me at the time, these minor league ball players. But to me, they were gods that walked, trod the turf at Municipal Stadium, and they were these giants who were great ball players, and I got the opportunity as a little kid to play catch with them and take infield practice. I would take infield practice with these guys, and that was a great thrill. That was pretty good.
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream.
Well, my dad started in the sandlots of Detroit. For Koenig Cole was the first picture I ever saw of my dad playing ball. He had a mitt, I think it was about as big as my hand. In those days, the mitts were so small, as you know. And oddly enough, we looked an awful lot alike in many respects. And I can recall him playing sandlot, and that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid, play ball, and that's all he ever wanted to do. And all he really ever did much. He went to school as little as possible and played ball all the time. He would skip sometimes to play ball. I don't recommend that to anybody, but that's what he would do. And then he played for another company team, name I can't remember. Koenig Cole was the first one. Then he played like Legion ball as a little older man. But he played before it was his time. He's a very good player. He started playing American Legion before he was a teenager, which is pretty unusual. And he wasn't big for his age. He was just good. And he caught the attention of some people, and he began to play more regularly, and then he played regular Legion, not junior Legion, began to play regular Legion ball when he was in his early teens. And He almost signed a contract when he was 15, but his mother wouldn't let him do it. So he went to work. See, my dad got out of high school and he went to work. He got out fairly early and he went to work for Fisher Body because his uncle was the head of Fisher Body. His name.
What ultimately brought him to Jamestown? Did he bring the family with the Jamestown at the time?
This was the first. We had lived in Buffalo, but he fell in love with the area, and he knew a guy named Fred Smith, who was one of his best friends, who's still alive today, living in Jamestown, who's a native. And how he ever got the job here, I guess he got to know Harry Bisgar, I guess, who convinced him to come down here and play and manage. And they fell in love with the area. What's not to fall in love with this area? I mean, it's gorgeous, as you know, and that's why you're here, and that's why Russ is here. The whistle.
Yeah.
And it went something like this. Only he did it 3 times louder than that.
Yeah.
And would be the. He'd do this little short thing and then this long one. And it was a whistle that he used to gain attention, and he'd clap when he was coaching, like third base or something. And even for the dugout. And it was an incredibly large whistle.
Did he call you
loud
home?
Whistle.
Call you home at night? With
Oh
that?
yeah, and that was the whistle. We heard that when we had to scoot home fast. My mother called, we could linger. But when my dad called, we lickety-split home because he was a strict disciplinarian in many, many respects, and then also the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Do you remember Jake Pitler?
Yes, yeah. I was never very close to him, but certainly by name.
Well, I can remember my dad talking. They used to stage, and then when they get serious, plan to get increased fan support. They would have arguments with the umpires, and then they argue amongst themselves. You know, Jake and my father used to go at it, and they would plan what they do and what if they do this, and then the papers would be full of this stuff, and boy, the fans would come out in droves the next night.
So like a wrestling match, they were the...
Well, it was an element of theatricality,
Yeah.
a little showbiz in both their veins.
Well,
I think some of that rubbed off on me.
Wanted.
I remember them arguing, you know, and the veins would pop out. I thought, dear God, I used to get so involved. And even in the early 40s, I'd get so involved, too, because I was just a little itty-bitty guy, you know. But my dad would argue. I thought it was for real, you know, and I would get all upset. And he'd say, he'd come back and he'd say, "Well, just kidding, don't worry, kid, don't worry, son. Don't worry, it's not that serious," he would say. He never admitted that it was an act until much later, and I found out.
Okay, Greg is next. Down below, please. Come on. Oh, yeah.
That was great. Look at you. You can come back to big girl.
This is such a thrill. Immortalized in Brooklyn Square.
Most of them, like a snowflake, each one is separate.
All right.